I analyzed 100 rebound stories. The harsh truth I found. Breakups are messy, and what comes next is often even messier. Everywhere online, people talk about rebound relationships like they're either toxic traps or miracle cures. But I wanted to cut through the noise. So I dove into 100 real rebound stories from forums, blogs, research papers, and personal accounts. I wasn't looking for feel-good advice, I wanted patterns. And what did I find? It wasn't black and white, but it was honestly eye-opening. This video isn't just about breakups, it's about what we do with the pain, and how that choice shapes everything that follows. We hear the term all the time, but what actually is a rebound relationship? At its core, it's when someone jumps into a new relationship shortly after a breakup, often before they've had time to emotionally heal. Sometimes it's about distraction. Other times it's about filling a void, avoiding grief, or proving something to an ex. But here's the catch: on the surface, rebounds can feel like hope. Underneath, they're often stitched together with unresolved feelings. In many of the stories I read, people didn't even realize they were in a rebound until it was already ending. So before we judge them, we need to understand why they happen in the first place. So why do people rebound? It's easy to say loneliness, but that's just the surface. At the core, it's often attachment anxiety, that fear of being alone, abandoned, or forgotten. Psychologists describe it as a kind of emotional panic, where the loss of a partner feels like a threat to your identity. Many people in the stories I read weren't chasing love, they were chasing safety. One person wrote, "The silence after my breakup scared me more than being with someone I barely knew. That's not chemistry, that's survival mode." Others admitted their rebound was about ego. They didn't miss their ex, they missed being chosen. So they found someone, anyone, just to feel desired again. Sometimes it was about revenge, flaunting a new relationship to hurt an ex. Other times it was about validation, proving to themselves they were still lovable, still wanted, still enough. And here's something many people don't expect. Some rebounds were driven by status. Not emotional need, but social optics. One person said, "I didn't want to be the one who was single first." All of this leads to the same harsh truth. Rebounds are rarely about who the new person is. They're about what they represent: a distraction, a trophy, a painkiller, or a shield. And until those deeper needs are seen and addressed, no new relationship, no matter how shiny, can actually fix what's still broken. After a breakup, most people aren't just hurting, they're panicking. Many rebound stories began not with desire, but with fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of sitting with the pain. Rebounds become a way to dodge that discomfort. Instead of grieving, people replace. Instead of processing, they pursue. It's emotional avoidance dressed up as a fresh start. And the irony? The more someone avoids feeling broken, the more likely they are to break the next relationship too. That pattern showed up again and again in the stories I analyzed. Research says, are rebounds always bad? You might actually be surprised the science doesn't totally hate rebounds. Some studies show that people who start dating again quickly can actually recover faster from a breakup. They report higher self-esteem, less attachment to their ex, and even more trust in new partners. But, and it's a big but, only when their motives are honest. If someone's dating to escape pain, it backfires. If they're dating with clarity, it can help them grow. So rebounds aren't always doomed, but without self-awareness, they're rarely healthy either. Emotional convenience versus emotional readiness. One of the clearest patterns I saw, people weren't falling in love, they were falling into emotional convenience, calling someone only when you're lonely, rushing into "I love you" before even knowing their last name. That's not connection, it's comfort seeking. True emotional readiness means you can stand on your own, and then choose someone. In rebound stories, the opposite was often true. People chose someone because they couldn't stand being alone, and that difference, honestly, it made or broke everything. The most common signs of a rebound relationship. Across the 100 stories I read, certain patterns showed up over and over again, and they weren't always dramatic. Sometimes the most damaging signs were subtle. First, rushing in too fast. People jumping into "I love you" within days, planning trips, moving in, or talking about the future before even learning the basics about each other. One story described it perfectly. "It felt magical, but now I realize we didn't build anything. We just skipped to the ending." Second, constant comparisons to the ex. Whether it's you're so much better than them or my ex hated this but you like it, it's still about the ex. Some rebounders even admitted they looked for partners who were opposites of their ex just to feel different. But they weren't truly present with the person in front of them. Third, emotional inconsistency. This one was huge. Many people said their rebound only reached out when they were down. As soon as things got better, they'd pull away or go quiet. It wasn't about connection, it was about emotional convenience. Fourth, being kept separate from their life. No introduction to friends, no long-term talk, no shared calendar. You're in their life, but not in their life. One person said, I felt like a side character in someone else's movie. Fifth, being used for performance. A surprisingly common one, being posted on social media to look happy, make the ex jealous, or prove something. Not because it was real, but because it looked good. Individually, these signs might seem like nothing. Together, they often point to a relationship built on fear, not love. And the toughest part, many people in these stories saw the signs. They just didn't want to believe them. When rebounds turn toxic, the damage cuts deep, even though not every rebound is a crisis. In dozens of stories I read, the rebound wasn't just rushed, it actually became manipulative. People described feeling used, sidelined, or emotionally yo-yoed. Some rebounders even admitted they entered a new relationship purely to get revenge. One person said, I wasn't into her, I just wanted my ex to see me move on first. That's not love, that's using someone as a weapon. Others turned their new partner into a mirror, not really connecting but projecting instead. They tried to recreate moments from their past relationship or picked fights, expecting their ex's behavior to repeat. One person shared, he'd compliment me but only in comparison to his ex. I never felt like I was enough on my own. That's when the relationship becomes a shadow, always haunted by someone who's not even there. Then there's the love bomb and fade cycle. At first, it's intense, constant attention, big gestures, words like soulmate. But once the rebounder stabilizes emotionally, they disconnect. Suddenly they're distant, cold, or even resentful. Because the rebound wasn't about connection, it was about numbing. And the person on the other end, they're left confused, hurt, and doubting their worth. That's the toxic edge of a rebound, when one person is healing and the other is collateral damage. The research and the stories showed a pretty consistent trend. Men are more likely to rebound quickly. Why is that? Well, often they have less emotional support after a breakup, fewer friends to talk to, and more pressure to move on. Many men admitted jumping into something just to avoid feeling alone. Women, on the other hand, tended to take more time, but when they did rebound, it often hit harder emotionally. Still, both genders fell into the same trap, using a new relationship to escape pain from the last one. So it's really not about gender, it's about how we cope. One of the biggest surprises, rebounding fast doesn't always mean disaster if the person is emotionally aware. Studies found that people who dated again quickly sometimes moved on faster and actually felt better overall. They reported higher self-worth, fewer lingering feelings for their ex, and more respect for their new partner. But timing alone isn't the issue. It's why you're dating. Jumping in to grow, it might help. Jumping in to escape, that's when things fall apart. Rebounds aren't about the clock, they're about the context. Yes, some rebound relationships do work out, but honestly, they're the exception, not the rule. In the stories where rebounds actually lasted, one thing really stood out: honesty. People were upfront about their emotional state. They took things slow. They didn't expect the new person to fix them. They showed up as whole as they could. There was space for healing within the relationship, not because of it. And both partners had clarity. No games, no comparisons, no hidden ex drama. Those rebounds weren't really rebounds, they were real starts with timing that just happened to be fast. Here's the harsh part most people just don't expect. Rebounds don't erase heartbreak, they delay it. So many stories ended with the same realization: I never actually processed the breakup. When the rebound ended, all the grief hit at once, heavier, sharper, and more confusing. For the rebound partner, it felt like betrayal. For the rebounder, it felt like crashing after a high. In trying to skip the pain, they only stretched it out, and often hurt someone else along the way. Some red flags scream, but in rebound relationships, the most dangerous ones, well, they whisper, these aren't the obvious deal breakers. They're the quiet signals that something just isn't right. And in story after story, people admitted they felt something was off, but ignored it. First, emotional patterns, not emotional presence. If they only reach out when they're sad or lonely and disappear when things are fine, that's not a relationship. That's emotional convenience. It feels like connection, but it's just a coping cycle. Second, you feel like a secret. If you're not meeting their friends, never mentioned to family, or kept off their social media, it's not always privacy. Sometimes it's because they know it's temporary. One person said, "He introduced me as a friend for months. Turns out that's all he saw me as." Third, constant but subtle ex talk. Not full-on comparisons, just random mentions that don't stop. Little references, nostalgic stories, or casual name drops. It means their past is still sitting in the passenger seat, even if you're in the front. Fourth, the relationship escalates too perfectly. Trips, gifts, sleepovers, fast I love yous. It feels magical, but sometimes it's just momentum, not meaning. People often said, "We moved fast, but I couldn't shake the feeling he didn't really know me." Fifth, you feel more anxious than secure. Even without drama, something feels unstable. You question where you stand. You overanalyze texts. You feel afraid to bring up your needs. That emotional tension is your nervous system, sensing that you're not the priority. Here's the truth. Most people don't miss these red flags. They dismiss them. Because when you want something to work, you tell yourself stories. But if it feels off, even without proof, it usually is. This might be the hardest place to be, not because of what's happening, but honestly, because of what you suspect is happening. If you think you're someone's rebound, chances are you probably are. And deep down, you already know. Here's what showed up in the stories. People felt like they were in a relationship but not being chosen. They were present but not prioritized. Loved maybe, but only when it was convenient. So what do? Start by asking yourself the real questions. Are they still talking about their ex even casually? Do they avoid defining the relationship? Do they only open up when they're hurting? Are you feeling unsure, unseen, or emotionally sidelined? If even one answer makes your stomach sink, just pause. Not to panic, but to protect yourself. One woman wrote, "I didn't realize I was a rebound until he healed and left. Then it all made sense. The fast love, the slow commitment, the silence when I needed him." If you're the rebounder, it's okay to want comfort. But be honest. Don't pretend it's love if it's really a distraction, because someone else's heart isn't your bandage. And if you're the reboundee, you deserve someone who shows up because they want to, not because they needed someone to stop the bleeding. This was the pattern that came up again and again. People weren't lying to others, they were lying to themselves, saying, "This is different," when deep down they knew it wasn't. Calling it love when it was really fear, ego, or loneliness. In most rebound stories, the harshest truth wasn't about the ex or the new partner, it was about self-awareness. The heart wants healing, but the mind rushes to replace. And until that gap is closed, rebound relationships stay built on denial, not connection. So if rebounds are risky, what should you do after a breakup? That's what I was really looking for in all these stories, the ones who came out stronger. The people who didn't just survive heartbreak, they used it. Here's what they did differently. First, they sat in the pain, instead of replacing it. They let themselves grieve. Not endlessly, but intentionally. They journaled, reflected, stayed off dating apps. Not because they were punishing themselves, but because they knew healing has to happen before connection can. Second, they asked hard questions. Am I looking for comfort or for clarity? Do I like this person or just hate being alone? These questions kept them from repeating cycles. Third, they set boundaries, especially emotional ones. Some waited months before dating again. Others dated but communicated their emotional state clearly. One person wrote, "I told her I was still healing. She appreciated the honesty, and that's what made it work." Fourth, they didn't rush the narrative. No timelines, no pressure to prove they were okay. They let things unfold slowly. Because when you slow down, you actually notice how you feel. not just that you feel something. Fifth, they focused inward, not outward. They rebuilt their routines, their confidence, their joy, without needing someone next to them. Not to be strong, but to be ready. And here's the most powerful line I found in all 100 stories. Once I stopped trying to find the next person, I finally found myself. So what should you do instead of rebounding? You reclaim your own story before you write someone else into it. Rebounds aren't all bad, but they're rarely what they seem. They can feel like forward motion, when they're actually just emotional cover-ups. The stories I read weren't just about relationships, they were about people trying to outrun pain. But you can't heal by skipping steps. Whether you're the one who rebounded or the one who was the rebound, the truth is the same. Healing beats replacing. Because when you heal, you don't need someone, you choose them, and that's where real connection begins. Don't leave without subscribing, liking, and sharing your thoughts in the comments.